All right, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rob Retzloff with the Connected Commerce Council, also known as 3C, and I just want to thank you all for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, Navigating Uncertainty, the Power of Small Business Advocacy. I know that running a business right now is not easy, and you taking the time to join us for this live event is greatly appreciated, from rising costs to the changing policies and regulations right now. American small businesses are facing a lot of challenges, and many of those challenges are shaped by what's happening in Washington, D.C. and in state capitals all across the country. That's why conversations like the ones that we're having today matter. For those of you that don't know, 3C, we work to make sure small, digitally powered small businesses like yours have a voice in the policies that affect your success. So whether you're new to advocating for your small business or have already engaged, this webinar is meant to give you real, actionable ways to speak up, protect what you've built, and make a difference. This webinar is also great timing. For those of you that might not know, Congress will be in its August recess soon. The House is already in recess. The Senate is about to go in recess, which means lawmakers are going to be back in their home states and districts. This is a great opportunity to connect with them, share your story, and contribute to shaping the conversation on the ground and let them know what it's really like to run a small business in the digital economy. So, in just a few minutes, we're going to hear from a really fantastic group of small business leaders who have stepped into the policy space and are making a difference in protecting the digital tools they use to better run and grow their companies. We're also going to hear some insights from an expert on the latest in tech policy and what to watch for later this year. But before we dive in, I just wanted to do a quick poll to help us get started. By clicking yes or no, who here has advocated before for their business? Have you ever participated in any? Looked like that was a wrong poll. Here we go. Who here has advocated for their business before? Yes or no? And then what do you think is the biggest barrier to keeping small businesses from engaging in advocacy? We'll give everyone just a couple of seconds here to answer. So if you guys feel free to jump in and answer. Not sure if this is launched or not, but we'll see. Perfect. Cool. So not sure if that worked, but all good. These responses we'll get eventually, and that's going to help us shape the conversation today. We've got a couple more questions that we'll ask towards the end of the webinar. But to get things started, I wanted to introduce someone who's been a big part in helping small businesses speak up and be heard. Chris Grimm is the CEO of the RXN Group, and he works closely with business leaders all across the country to make sure their voices are part of the policy conversation. He's going to give us a quick overview of some of the issues we're tracking right now, and then we'll be moderating our panel discussion with the fellow small business leaders. So, Chris, turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. It's great here. It's great to be here today and talk with you all about advocacy from one small business owner to another. As Rob mentioned, my name is Chris Grimm. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of RXN. I always tell people I'm a policy nerd by birth and a political hack by training, and that now I'm an influencer. But instead of selling workout routines on TikTok, my job's to help influence public policy. We've been working with 3C to help small businesses understand important policy issues and tell their stories to policymakers at the state and federal levels. I know it's likely that no one on this call started a business because they were interested in public policy. I did, that's me. Most people here had a different path. Most of you had an idea or a passion and found a way to turn that into a business. But almost every issue policymakers debate at every level of government impacts our business because every issue is a small business issue. As business owners and leaders, we know there are always variables beyond our control, and there always will be, particularly during these uncertain times. But we have more control over some variables than others. I'm here to tell you that public policy is one of those variables that you can influence. Policymakers work for you, right? Their job is to represent their constituents. Most, if not all of them, take that job really seriously, and they want to do that job well to benefit their community. And I can tell you from doing this for the last 20 years, few people are more influential within a community than job creators. You have a unique perspective and with it, a very unique responsibility. But policymakers can't read your mind. Most of them know very little about your business and which proposals might help or hurt it. They need you to tell them what you need and are concerned about so they can consider your concerns. They decide how to vote, what to support or oppose. You wouldn't ignore other issues that could impact your company's bottom line, like supplier issues, your lease running up. We're going to hear some examples from some great small business owners in a little bit about how they saw issues that would impact their business and used advocacy as a means to help them. The policymakers are very rarely experts about things like digital advertising, email marketing, or e-commerce. There are just too many issues that require too many decisions. They have to rely on their constituents and community experts like you, but they can only do that if you help them by sharing your knowledge and your opinion. You are the best narrator of your story. You're the foremost expert on your business. Because ultimately, that's what advocacy is really all about. You don't have to be a policy expert. You don't have to have a law degree. And it certainly doesn't matter which party you may or may not belong to or whether or not you vote. Advocacy is about representing your interests and your concerns to policymakers. It's about ensuring that the unique challenges and needs of small businesses are heard and addressed. And if you don't make your voice heard, trust me, somebody else will. They'll claim to know what is best for your business, and they will try to tell a story on your behalf without knowing anything about you, how you operate, your needs, your concerns. And this really matters because the policies shaped by advocacy can make a difference between a thriving business environment and one that can stifle growth and innovation. I also want to talk about, there's an on-ramp here. This is far more accessible than folks may think. It may seem intimidating to get involved in policy or advocacy, but there are many ways to get involved and many ways to make our voices heard. In just a few minutes, we'll hear from the real stars of today's program. And again, they'll tell you how they got involved in advocacy and how they jumped headfirst into it. They'll tell you that advocacy takes many different forms, from writing a letter to a member of Congress, to drafting an opinion piece for your local newspaper, to meeting with your local representatives. They all have an impact. If you want to get involved, there's no time like the present. As Rob mentioned, every August, members of Congress flee Washington because it's really hot and humid here for their district offices to reconnect with voters. It's an excellent opportunity to meet with lawmakers without having to trek to Washington. Take the time to learn who they are. You can go online and figure out who represents you in Congress, who represents you in your state legislature at county level. Schedule a meeting with their staff. Introduce yourself. Introduce that you're a business owner in their district. If you run into them out in the community, go up, say hi, introduce yourself. Relationships very much matter here. And elected officials, they want to hear from you. Because right now, as we speak, there are several policy issues that state and federal lawmakers are considering that would impact every business on this call. I'm going to talk through a few of them in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to take a moment to pause and see if there are any questions about advocacy, how to get involved, or anything else before we get into the specific policy section. Any questions from folks? No? All right, I'll keep rolling. So what are some of the policy issues that 3C and digitally empowered small businesses are watching closely? One is privacy legislation. For those who aren't familiar, we don't have a national federal privacy law. So it has fallen on states to sort of regulate this space. And what's happened is multiple states, more than 20, have developed their own privacy laws that's created an environment that's incredibly difficult to track and comply with for small businesses. Most of you have customers that live across state lines, right? That's part of the digital world. Almost every business, even brick and mortar traditional businesses, are using email marketing or have a social media presence. And there will be people that are on your list that follow you on social media that you interact with that are from a different state. A patchwork of state privacy laws is impossible for small businesses to navigate incredibly risky because you may not know that you're not complying with another state's laws, and incredibly expensive to navigate. In addition, some states have passed, and even more are considering, really radical approaches to regulating data collection and use. Right? Some states have said companies can only collect the minimum data necessary for a requested product or service, regardless of whether the customer's opted in or anything else. So what does that mean? It means if you have a clothing store and a customer walks into your store and buys a shirt, and then they come back 2 weeks later and you say, oh, hey, Rob, I've got some ties that go really well with that shirt you bought last week. That's good customer service, right? When that happens in the in-person environment, that makes the customer feel good. It's good for your business, right? It's good customer service. This law, the way these are framed, would say if that happens online, that's not allowed because you can only use data from that first sale, selling someone that shirt, for only delivering them that shirt. You can't use it to make personalized recommendations. You can't make it for that data can't be used by your digital partners. For those of you who use companies like Constant Contact or Shopify, they're all integrating with your business. They're all collecting data and are using it for metrics, analytics, other things like that. And then companies like Google and Meta are using all of that data to power digital advertising. This hits small businesses like yours the most, right? Because either if you are above a carve out, so a lot of these bills will say if you have fewer than 100,000 people on your list, this doesn't apply to you. It's a really small number for today's day and age in the digital economy. But also a lot of the data that you're working with is being processed, collected, integrated with platforms like Google, Meta, Shopify, Constant Contact, and others. This is really restricting what they could do. Some will also invite frivolous lawsuits. Talk to a number of small businesses who run into this issue with things like California's Prop 65 or the American with Disabilities Act, where unscrupulous lawyers will target small businesses in particular, will file a lawsuit claiming that you're in violation of a law, sue for millions of dollars, but offer a quick, convenient settlement for just a few tens of thousands of dollars. Most small businesses can't even afford that. And this creates a lot of risk when laws allow anyone to bring suits, or it's called a private right of action. Laws like this have passed in Maryland and are currently being considered in states like Massachusetts. We expect more proposals like this over the coming year. This is why we need a national privacy law, right? Small businesses need a single privacy law that's easy to navigate, easy to understand, protects people's most sensitive data. I think we all agree that people's most sensitive data, things like their bank account info, things that are personally identifiable, bank account information, all of that should be very, very tightly protected. However, that also needs to be balanced with data's critical role in the digital economy for things like analytics, knowing where your customers are located. If you own a restaurant and you want to open a second location, knowing that you have a critical mass of customers that are in one part of your city versus another is a really important analytic that you want to be able to leverage data to figure out. So making that balance is really, really important. This is something we've worked a lot on this year. Small businesses have made a really big impact in places like Maine and Vermont and a number of other states. Excuse me. And are going to continue to do so as these bills are considered. Some states do have really good privacy laws. Connecticut has been a model for a number of states and does a really good job balancing between the need to protect people's information while also understanding this role that data plays in the digital economy. Next, some of you may have heard the term AI, artificial intelligence. Sort of all the rage right now. It is the latest sort of transformational technology. And in terms of small businesses, AI-powered tools are really just starting to become widely available for small businesses. Things like customer service chatbots, resume screeners, and so many more are no longer only available to the biggest companies with the deepest pockets, but they're now available to businesses large and small. There's a lot of misunderstanding from policymakers about AI. there have been some recent efforts to enact very burdensome regulations on the companies that develop and use these AI tools. Everyone agrees we need smart AI and legislation that protects people from the risks, particularly when it comes to issues like defense and national security. However, similar to privacy, absent federal law, there's been a continuing patchwork piecemeal approach to AI. And some of these proposals would require companies that develop or use AI tools for things like helping with employment decisions, screening resumes, would require these companies to undergo costly requirements, a requirement that isn't required for when you're not using AI to make these same decisions. That's just going to make AI tools more expensive, harder to access. So we need a single national AI law that understands and addresses AI's risks on a case-by-case basis while not overburdening AI developers and users. There's a proposal in California right now where if you are based in California and you use an AI tool for certain decision-making help for more than 2,000 people on average over 3 years, you would have to do these costly audits, as well as the company whose AI-powered tool you're using will have to do these costly audits. It's just going to make your job harder and more expensive across the board, right? AI represents tremendous value for small businesses for increasing efficiency, scale, and competing with much larger companies. Things that are just going to make that technology more expensive are just going to push them back into the purview of big companies and leave you all at a competitive disadvantage. Another issue we're watching closely is called content moderation and censorship. So these are the rules that allow websites to host third-party content. This includes things like banner ads, online reviews, discussion forums. And the way the rules are currently set up allows these platforms to remove content that is inappropriate for their site or their community, but also protects them from legal liability. So for those of you who understand the importance of online reviews, Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor, you have a business that thrives on reviews, you sell on Amazon, that's third-party content, right? Because that is a customer posting their point of view, their perspective on someone else's website. The underlying website is not legally responsible for what gets posted in those reviews. And so those reviews are enabled by this current structure. It allows things like online marketplaces to function, and it makes online advertising possible. But platforms need to be able to remove scam ads or fake review listings and ensure that this remains sort of a free and open marketplace, right? If every Google review had to be reviewed by a lawyer for liability, that's now going to make it a much more expensive thing to do. So you as a business may have to pay to have Google host reviews of your business, or only certain people will be allowed to review. You have to go through an approval process to limit that liability risk. So this is what's made sort of the modern internet possible, right? If you sell on Amazon, just imagine if Amazon had to have lawyers review every word from your listing. Create significant hurdles and just increase costs across the board. And again, this is sort of fundamental to how the modern internet works. Everything from social media to ads to online marketplaces have been made possible by this structure. So efforts to change that structure, whether it's limiting, taking down, content. So there's been a push to call some of this censorship and limit websites' ability to remove content. That makes it really hard to do things like advertise, right? Some of you may have blogs, may have other businesses where you're getting advertising revenue. You want the ability to control what types of ads are showing up on your website. For those of you who are advertising too, you want to be able to control what sites your brand and your business is showing up next to. This is all made possible by this current framework. Next up, who here likes taxes, right? That's something that universally, right? No one is jazzed about taxes. There have been efforts in a number of states to introduce some new digital taxes, whether it's on digital advertising, or other digital services. Most of the time, these are sort of money grabs by states to offset, lowering property taxes or other issues. Digital taxes, whether they're on advertising or other digital services, are just going to make those services more expensive for your business. And that's something that policymakers might not always understand. They're going to think, oh, we're going to tax digital ads. That's a tax on Google and Facebook. It's actually a tax on the people who are paying for those services, who are paying for those ads, which we know will disproportionately impact small businesses. Lastly, there are a number of issues that would impact digital advertising in the legal world. So there have been a number of high-profile court cases that would impact small businesses, including a number of suits against Google. So right now, the Department of Justice is suing Google around Google being the default search engine on devices. The Department of Justice has proposed breaking up Google. Instead of saying, no, you can't just pay to have your search engine be the default anymore. The DOJ has said, no, we need to break apart Google. We need to spin off Chrome. We need to potentially spin off the Android operating system. And want to force other changes into how online search and advertising work. So Google's been a huge tool for businesses large and small. They've invested a ton in creating things like analytics and other services. If you break the company apart or you require them to share the data that they're getting or share how they come up with their search results for their companies, really going to undermine their incentive to continue to innovate and deliver top quality services. And then for those who use sort of Google's ad tech, so if you're advertising on non-Google websites, Google's great at connecting your small business with the right website to advertise on, right? Because they're sort of in the middle, just like Uber connects drivers and riders. Google connects advertisers with publishers and ensures that your business gets in front of the right audience with the right targeting to keep your ads efficient and affordable. There's another lawsuit that would aim to sort of break up Google's role in that marketplace. So these are some of the things that we are looking at from the 3C perspective. Happy to pause and answer any questions from folks before we go on to our panel and hear from our businesses. So I got one that came in. We'll answer one or two of these, and then we'll jump to our panel. They're the real star. No one wants to hear me talk more. Can you talk more about the importance of crafting AR regs that balance risk harms to small businesses, but also the benefits that AI-powered tools can offer? Sure, I think there are risks the same way there are in any sort of industry, in any business. Scams and fraud is illegal, whether I call you on the phone and commit fraud, send you a spam email message, or I use AI to do it. I think the approach here is let's craft the right framework that recognizes that some of this stuff is already illegal and regulated, and let's ensure that that's being enforced, right? Because it's the activity that's illegal, not the way in which you do it. But also understand that creating a one-size-fits-all approach to AI and saying all AI is regulated the same is what's really going to cause risks for small businesses in terms of higher prices and less access. Are there any AI policies currently in place at the federal or state level? There are. Colorado passed a sweeping AI regulatory law last year that they may be backpedaling on a little bit right now. It does a lot. It requires a lot of requirements for companies that are using or developing AI, including things like those costly audits that I mentioned before in California. And so wanna flag that as an example of a state that was leading on this in a way that may go a little bit too far. And so then for folks who joined late, just a little bit about 3C, and then we'll turn it over to our panelists. So 3C, the Connected Commerce Council, is an organization representing digitally empowered small businesses, which in today's day and age, I say every business is a digitally empowered small business. You could be a not traditional tech company. You could be a dry cleaner, or another brick and mortar business, and you have a website, you are advertising online, you have a social media presence. All of these are digital tools that you're using. Also, just a quick reminder, there will be a recording of this that goes out. So if you feel like you missed anything, you can go back and watch. You could also reach out to us afterwards if you have any questions. With that, I want to introduce our panel of terrific small business owners who've, like me, have caught the advocacy bug and are now kind of involved in a couple different policy issues. I want to introduce Melanie Bolin, Loyson Godin, Becky App, and Garrett Peters. So if you guys all want to turn on your camera, see everyone, and unmute your microphones. I'll let everyone do a quick round of introductions. So Melanie, do you want to go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your business,
Sure.
and why you love advocacy.
Okay. My name's Melanie Bolin, and I am the co-founder of a women's apparel brand out of Kansas City, Missouri. And we have been in business about 13 years. The reason I got involved was really kind of happenstance. I'd had a negative experience and really didn't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. And through different people got introduced to 3C, quite frankly, that really helped me understand how to get involved with that advocacy, because it's a little bit murky, and trying to understand it might seem really big, but it's not actually once you're connected to the right people that get you into the flow of having a voice.
Great, thank you. Loyson, tell us a bit about you and your wonderful tavern there in New York and what got you into the advocacy world.
Hey, good afternoon, good day, everybody. My name is Loyson Gordon, owner of Historic Nares Tavern. It's a place that's known as the oldest continuously operating tavern in New York City, located in a small section of Queens called Woodhaven. Well, listen, I got involved because literally without advocacy, New York City's oldest tavern would have been closed a long time ago. I get more into it later, but we are at an extreme disadvantage. We don't have economy of scale. And so what else do we have? We have our voices, we have our bodies, we have our restaurants and our business that we can use to leverage to help balance that economy of scale that we don't have. So that's why I want to get involved, and I'll talk more about what that's all about and some examples. And I'm really excited to share and hopefully help anyone that's on this call.
Great, thank you. Next up, Becky App, who we're not supposed to play favorites, but is one of my favorite business owners because they make and sell delicious ice cream online to get delivered to your front door. So Becky, take it away.
Well, thank you, Chris. That is so nice of you. It is easy to get behind ice cream, I suppose. My name is Becky App, and I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and we have ecreamery.com. And we've been doing this for about 18 years. We had a parlor, very traditional in a historic part of the neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska, that we just didn't have the population base to support. So 18 years ago, we went online, and now 90% of our business is e-commerce. That is our lifeline, and we use digital tools to reach our biggest customer bases in New York, LA, and Houston. And we actually subsidize our brick and mortar. So without our e-commerce arm, we could not keep our brick and mortar ice cream store open for our family-friendly neighborhood. And that's really important to us. So it's really given us a new lifeline of business and led to a lot of success all across the country. And with advocacy, I got started. This is a definite testimonial to 3C. We had met 3C through some Google contacts years back, and I didn't really have the time, I thought, to focus on advocacy. It just, your inboxes, they're always full. So reached out and let us know there was a huge digital ad tax being put out in legislature, and we had not heard of it. Had they not reached out and told us, we would not have been aware. And when we took a look at it, it was very clear it was going to really hurt our marketing budget significantly. So 3C held our hand and took us through the whole process of how to fight it. And I'm really happy to say it got shut down and we stopped it. And that really showed me how important and easy it was.
Great. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Garrett Peters.
Hey guys, good afternoon. I'm Garrett Peters, calling in from Fayetteville, Arkansas, not far from Melanie up in Kansas City. I'm one of the co-founders of Duncan and Stone Paper Company. We started in 2019. I started the business with my wife and two of our best friends, and we sell keepsake journals for all sorts of life stages. And all online. And so it's been a blast growing this brand from conception in 2019 to where we are today. So it's been a real fun journey. I mean, for me, probably a year and a half ago, you know, like Becky just mentioned, as a small business owner, your head's down, you're trying to grind and keep all the plates spinning, right? And so it's probably a year and a half ago where I'm like, became aware of a couple different like digital policies that were out there that would impact us in a significant way. So yeah, just started really learning more and trying to understand what was out there. And you know, you don't know what you don't know. So started learning more about it and began to get involved in the process.
Great. Thank you all so much. I think for every business that gets involved in this, there's a moment where it doesn't just become abstract, right? Like it's not just, oh, policymakers are out there, they're over here, they're doing their thing. There's a moment where it becomes personal, right? It's about how you reach customers, manage your costs, or keep your doors open. Garrett, since you only touched on this a little bit, you know, I'd love to expand on when you first realized that this could affect your business. What were some of those specific policies that made you kind of go, aha, and motivated you to get involved in it?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind, Chris, is something you mentioned a little bit ago, content moderation. You know, so thinking it for us, we sell 99% of our businesses online. So Amazon, different marketplaces, Shopify, you name it. And through connections and being able to learn more about it through 3C, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually going to affect our business. And so I think there was a kind of just some naivety around, you know, things that were happening out there, like wouldn't trickle down to me, but you know, starting to learn more about what impact some of those moderation changes would make on our reviews in particular was a big deal. So, you know, like most businesses, you know, it's the reviews are the lifeblood of Duncan and Stone. And so, you know, that learning about that and becoming aware of that and going, oh shoot, I got to get involved in this and I got to learn more about it and I got to start, you know, getting out there. I think was a big aha for me, probably a year and a half ago.
Thank you so much, Garrett. Well, quick follow-up. What was your favorite thing that you've done in the advocacy world so far?
I think that being able to put an article out there through Help with 3C, they've been, I can't speak highly enough about being able to work with 3C. Super helpful for, you know, a guy who's a CEO of a business and don't have a lot of time, especially with 3 kids at the house for me. Whoa. So it's like, you know, when being able to they reached out to me and said, hey, would you want to put this article out there, you know, and defending kind of the need for, you know, just wisdom and guidance around how changes are going to be impacted around content moderation and things like that. That was probably the funnest project. You know, it was like, hey, I get to actually, you know, put an article out there. Didn't think that would ever be something I could do. So it's like, oh, sweet. They've allowed me to kind of get in the game in some way, which is super fun.
Great. It's a good follow-up that I'll ask to everyone. So feel free to jump in, Becky, Loyson, or Melanie on this one. But what would you say to other business owners or entrepreneurs who think that advocacy is not for them or it's too complicated, right? So, Garrett, you talked about how this was relatively easy. Loycent, Becky, Melanie, what would you guys say to someone who says, "Oh, I just don't have the time for that," or "That's too complicated. I'm not a lawyer or a policy person. I don't think I can get into that."
Well, I would just encourage everyone on the call to think about the future. You need to plan ahead for your business. And maybe today, none of the things you listed, Chris, might be pressing on your door to affect you today. But trust me, 100% a time is going to come when it will. And you don't know what it's going to be. And our overall message is to help lawmakers understand tech isn't scary. It isn't inherently bad. It is making a lot of really good things happen. So even if you don't have a problem today, to be able to build the case and give them stories of your experience to help them relay the good that technology is doing is going to help all of us in every single state because they can give real world examples to help do good things to get to digital tools in all small businesses' hands. And when I did this with 3C, it was very easy. I just like everyone has said in the call, Garrett was intimidated. I was very intimidated. I said no. But we said yes to the offer that Chris proposed earlier for the August recess. Our lawmaker is Don Bacon, and he was going to be back for recess, and the digital ad tax was out, and they said, invite him to your office. And we said, what are we going to even do? But we literally took them on a tour of what we do every day. Now, I admit it, we made him bacon flavored ice cream. So, yes, we have an advantage, but we gave them a day away from being beat up. Think of what these guys have gone through in the last 6 months. I mean, if you can give them an hour of learning about the good you're bringing to your state, it's going to be good for them because they can take that back, show they're doing their homework, and have a good story to relate. So, really, you just being yourself and telling them about what you do every day is going to help all of us.
I think that's very true, Becky. And like, for instance, what I would say for me, being in Kansas City and outside the apparel business, hubs of LA and New York City, we can feel kind of isolated here. And so really in connecting with 3C, when I was in Washington with them, and they're offering an opportunity to sit down with policymakers to really discuss what's important to your business and what's important to keeping your business thriving as a small business. That was amazing. And then additionally, they asked me, do you want to talk on tariffs? Well, tariffs is outside the zone of what they actually tackle, but they know it's a really important topic, especially to a company such as myself. And so really that kind of opened up a whole different platform for me to be able to talk about my small business and how it actually relates to all small businesses we went through a little financial exercise, which was kind of interesting. And I just really appreciated the opportunity to explain my business. And I think if everybody really got a chance to kind of exercise that little muscle called a voice, I think you realize how easy it is. And it's especially working with a company something like 3C, they just make it so streamlined and easy for you.
I think a lot
Listen,
of
I know
people,
you've been.
yeah,
I was going to say, I know you've been doing this long before we connected with you. You've been inviting elected officials to Near's Tavern and building relationships for a long time. What's driven you to stay engaged in this work?
I mean, honestly, I've seen what the results are of being involved. And I just want to speak to the fact that a lot of people think, including myself at one point, think that I'm not one of those people that will stand up in City Hall and with a sign and yell and scream. And it's not that specifically, right? we can all kind of invite our local elected official to our restaurants. We can all kind of say, hey, that once you come by, I'm going to invite some customers. You can speak on some things. One, you're going to get some customers in your place, so you're going to make some money. And oftentimes with politicians and customers, you also get press. So it also helps your business. So I really look at it as an integrative kind of approach. It's just part of the entire ecosystem of business and not that one thing. And I'll give you an example of, doing that helps build relationships, right? You don't want to call your elected official when you're in a jam. And I was in a jam once because I was renewing my liquor license and something happened with the paperwork. And literally I had like a week left before I lose my liquor license because I couldn't get the paper in time. He literally picked up the phone and called up one of the head of New York State Liquor Authority and said, hey, can you do me a favor? I'm faxing all this paperwork over. I know it's supposed to be mail certified, but it's me, Assemblyman Miller at the time. And literally I got my liquor license. I mean, I could have, not have any kind of a liquor sales, which would have, really destroyed me. But those relationships that was built by inviting them, talking to them, and having that part of the ecosystem of a small business without this, crazy, let me stand on a pulpit and yell the loudest, was really the difference makers. And I could just tell you story on and on and on and on. But essentially it's just building the relationship, and because you never know when you'll need it. You'll never know. You don't want to call them up and they're like, who are you? All right, I'll make an appointment,
We like to say personal connections can change opinions, and it matters a lot, right? Having a relationship with your city council member, your state legislators, your members of Congress, it matters, and they really do remember people. Again, like they work for all of you. Couple other questions for folks. Just sort of to everyone, you guys can chime in. What's something policymakers often misunderstand about small businesses and digital tools? Like, Loisin, do you want to go first since you're already on screen? So what's something that policymakers misunderstand about how you run your business and how you use digital tools?
I think a lot of these policymakers have no clue what we're going through and what we actually need. These digital tools are the great equalizer. We are faced with so much odds and so much against us. And now we finally have this tool that we could use that level the playing field. And we have to fight to maintain the access to that. And it's really a problem. Taking this away, really, these ability to use these digital tools really puts us back at a disadvantage with the increasing rate of small businesses that are closing. A lot of them don't realize that, we use, digital ads specifically. For me, I use that to send out and to, advertise my local area, and that allows people to see me. And I get, I tell you a funny story about a $500 ad and a full page ad in the local paper. And one person showed up because I was given a 9-cent beer with the entree. And that person said, hey, can I just get the beer? And that was it, $500 gone. With digital ads that I'm using, I could literally keep showing that advertising to that person that clicked and showed interest into it, and keep doing that and see what the cost is and see what the customer acquisition cost is, right? So it really is changing, and I don't want us to have to fight to get access to this. So I'm advocating as loud as possible, because it's not just me anymore. It's about we as an industry.
Garrett, you want to tackle that one? What was something policymakers misunderstood about your business and the way you use digital tools?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is just kind of a misunderstanding at large on how we're using the data. Loisan, mentioned it a second ago, but for us, we're the same way. Like the way that we use customer data to send emails or do targeted ads or whatever it may be. It's like there's almost this idea that we're doing some shady stuff like behind the scenes. We're using this data to like, I don't know, just whatever it may be. And it's like, no, no, no. Like that's not what's actually going on, like it's just kind of going, okay, here's how we're actually using the data to be strategic with how we spend and how we use the digital tools out there. And for small businesses, it's so key. Like if you're going to compete with big brands or big companies out there, like we need to have access to all those things. And so it's just there's kind of like a misunderstanding of what data we have access to for the customer and then how we're actually using that data. So just trying to level set with like, hey, here's how we're actually doing it, et cetera, et cetera.
I also think, and this is a comment/question that anyone on the panel can feel free to jump in and answer. But I think there's a misconception or a misunderstanding about how seamlessly your digital partners integrate with your business. Like if you have a Shopify site on your website, you're not sending data over to Shopify or selling it to them, and they're not sending things back, right? It's all seamlessly integrated. And even if a small business like yours, Garrett, or yours, Becky, Melanie, Loyson, even if you guys are carved out of a bill that says you can't use data the same way you're using it now, you guys will still be impacted because you're so seamlessly integrated with your digital partners. Again, whether that's your social media, your ad partners, marketing, things like Constant Contact or Salesforce, if you're doing email marketing, Shopify, there's a lack of understanding in how that data moves between your website and your back end, your digital partners, your email, and how you get things like analytics to see this email got a really great open and click rate. This ad performed really, really well with this demographic in this area. And I think that's one thing that's really misunderstood. And so, Garrett, when you said they don't really understand the data that we have and what we're using, I think that rang true for me. And the more that they can hear from folks about like, look, if you say that Constant Contact can't use data for more than delivering emails, that means they can't use data to show me open rates and click rates and geographic and demographic data. Any thoughts on that from anyone else on the panel, like things that are misunderstood about your business and digital tools?
Well, I'll just echo my agreement. When we had Congressman Bacon come to visit us, we literally sat him down with Caitlin in IT and walked him through the steps of here's how we make a Google AdWords ad. This is how we find someone that we anticipate is going to be interested in buying our personalized ice cream gift. And you could see his apprehension in the beginning and the thoughts he had in his mind of us having this data that we can just mine through. And I think they think we have access to individual names and addresses and things, but showing him that process, you could see the understanding seep in. And he even verbalized that of like, this is completely different than what I would have expected. So I think just demystifying the process of that just goes so far.
Yeah, I also think that we hear so many stories about nefarious players out there, and those are obviously sensationalized. And I think that, yeah, there is a certain amount of protection that has to go behind that. But for the majority of small businesses, we're using this information to actually supply our customer with something that they want faster and exactly what they want. So, um, you know, we filter through our email list all the time. All the time we are filtering out names because if we don't get a response, we know that person's really not interested in us. We filter them right on out. We really only want to touch out to people who want our product. And if we know a little bit more about them because they dialogue with us at that point, then we can refine our product mix to really provide them with what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think also one of the things that needs to be understood by policymakers is that there is a lot of controls that consumers still have in this process. Even if you look at the average TV advertising, right? Things just show up and advertise in the middle of your watching your your favorite show, and you have a choice to say, I'm going to call that advertising person, almost scan that QR code or not. And it's the same thing. I look at it when I look at online, and you're advertised to people within a certain geographic area because that's highly likelihood that that person is your ideal customer. And then they have an opportunity to say, I'm going to opt in and give you my name and my number or whatever else, so that you can reach out to me because I'm interested in your product, right? Or they could just say, I'm not interested. Don't show me this ad anymore. So people, policymakers think that consumers don't have any real, say in a lot of it. It's already there. So you could do that. And then, of course, as a customer decides, okay, I want to be part of that, and they're part of your email database, they also has another option to say unsubscribe, right? So, people think that consumers don't have the option. They've already built in a lot of these things already. So I think it's just important for policymakers to understand that we do have protections for consumers.
You mean you all don't get a dossier when you advertise of everyone that that's visited your website?
I would really look at some of those politicians that I don't know how they get my cell phone and send me a million text messages to go. That they should look. How do you know my name? How do you know my cell phone number? Like I could opt out a million times and I'm still getting the same thing from the same politician. And these are the same people that saying, oh, you can't advertise to people. It's like, what is wrong with you, man? Like, you're just such a hypocrite.
Regulations for me, not for thee. That's the way.
Exactly.
One last question. We got a couple of audience questions, and then we'll try to get to. So if you have a question and you're watching, put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to it in the last few minutes before we wrap. But just real quick to everyone on the panel, if one of your elected officials was on this meeting right now, what's the one thing you'd want them to understand before they jump off?
I would say, to keep it very simple, if you want your small businesses to thrive in your local economy, don't overregulate digital marketing tools. That is their lifeline to reach the market that exists today. And the easier access those small businesses have, the better your economy is going to do.
And where you can do some national work versus making the small business have to dial into every state's compliance, that would be really helpful as well. We already have to do it with taxes. And so compliance on privacy laws would be, if that was a national law, that would be extremely helpful for everybody.
One thing that I would say is this: your ignorance shouldn't be the death of small business, because I've learned after being on US Capitol, talking to them, many of them are unaware of a lot of the issues that's happening, but still are passing legislation, signing off blindly, and doesn't understand that at the end of the day, we're going to face the repercussions. So your ignorance shouldn't be the death of the small business in your area. Learn more about these issues directly from the business owner, and also talk to the consumers, right? And I think we'll be in a better position to make proper laws that will protect small business and consumers at the same time.
I would just say, what are you doing in the next 30 days? Like, let's find an hour or two of time and come by a warehouse and I'll show you all the stuff we do, just like Becky did. I love that you did that. And
Ew.
I would say, hey, Steve, come on, man. I know you live close to our warehouse anyway. So come on over and let's look at it and talk about it.
We will help you draft an email to his office tomorrow.
I'm going to reach out to him today, Chris.
Great. Love it. All right. Quick questions from the audience. We'll try to get to as many as we can. How might overbroad data privacy rules make it harder for digital companies to support SMBs? I'll try and tackle this one quickly. Data is the lifeblood of marketing and advertising, right? Whether it's data that you collect as a business owner yourself on what people are buying, what they're clicking, ad-wise or email-wise, but it's also what makes advertising really effective online. The difference between mass media and online is buying a billboard on the freeway. You have a vague idea of who's driving past that, right? It's a busy commuter highway, so you've got an idea. It's people who work in the city, and you know, but it's still very general. It's very broad. It's painting with a fire hose. Where online, you know, Garrett may know that his ideal customer is someone between the ages of 30 and 45 who lives in these 10 states. They're your biggest states, who shows an interest in, I don't know, shovels. I'm just making something up. But you can use not individuals' data, but you can use your data about who your actual customers are to then determine the audience that sees your ads. And that's true whether it's on a website banner ad or social media or other things that are out there. When you restrict that data, you're making it harder for those digital companies to affordably and effectively reach the right audience. So if your ads are 5% less effective, that means they're 5% more expensive. Where Garrett, you mentioned earlier, or no, someone mentioned earlier, Loyce, and you mentioned earlier, you spent $500 and you got one person coming in looking for a 99-cent drink. If you spend $100 and you know that 10 people walk in off of that $100, now if you've got to spend 105 for the same 10 people to walk in, you add that up over your entire ad budget and over all your customers, and that's not an insignificant. That's 5% added to your costs off the top, and that's not insignificant. Another question for the panelists: how do you guys stay up to date on all this stuff?
Well, I mean, I personally, I experience these stuff every day. I look at this like this. When you start feeling hurt and you get frustrated about something, there's a policy that caused that. And you look up what policy it is, and I look to change it, right? That's the kind of general guideline. When you start saying, you know, what the heck is this? Like, why is my prices for my beer going up or something? Oh, there's a new tax delivery surcharge that some companies charge me to over, you know, for some reason or whatever, right? Why is that? Oh, because the government allowed them to do that for some odd reason. So whatever you feel the hurt, whatever's frustrating you right now, there's generally some legislation that's attached to that. You follow that and you fix it. At least call your local elected to come sit down and say, hey, what's going on with this?
Becky, Melanie, Garrett, we've got about a minute left. Any closing thoughts on how you keep up with all this?
Well, I read a lot. I read a ton. So, especially on these kinds of topics that relate to the business, I get up early in the morning. I also think you guys do an amazing job of providing us with really good information about what's coming down the pipe. How, and then you can self-select what's really important to your business. But I think having you guys be the sieve that sends out information and helps us make decisions on how and where to spend our time in advocacy.
So what you're saying is sign up for 3C today.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so.
You
I was
can-
going to say that.
Just
Stole my words.
You guys didn't
Parting
provide us
words,
with that
shameless
line.
Yeah, I was going to just have to be honest. It sounds like a canned response, but I skim your newsletters. I do not have time to be a policy expert. I have a million other things to do. So that's what I do. Once a month, I'll skim your newsletters and get the gist of what's going on. And if I have questions, I can always find the answers there. But it's a really easy thing to do, and it's effective.
Great. Well, we are at time. We didn't get to all the questions, but we will try to match them to folks who RSVP'd and answer you all on email. Becky, Melanie, Gary, Loyson, thank you all so much for your time today. Love working with you guys. The favorite part of my job is hearing your stories and hear you talk about your businesses. Thank you to Rob and 3C for putting this all together. Thank you all for joining us today. With that, I think we are at time, and we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you, Chris.
Guys, thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
See you guys.
Good luck, everyone.